"You're overqualified for security," Ray Charles told Marcus Mac Donnelly backstage at Cleveland Public Auditorium in 1976. The 31-year-old Vietnam veteran had been working venue security for 8 months, checking IDs and managing crowds despite having an engineering degree from Ohio State University. His crisp uniform and professional demeanor had caught Ray's attention during sound check, but it was the way Mac spoke with the precise language of someone educated far beyond his current role that made Ray stop and really listen. "Sir, it's the only job I could get," Mac replied quietly, his voice carrying the weight of disappointment that had become familiar after 8 months of rejections. He stood at attention slightly, a military bearing that never quite left soldiers who had served in combat zones. Ray Charles, who had spent his career reading people through their voices and mannerisms, heard something in Mac's tone that made him want to know more. Mac Donnelly had returned from Vietnam in 1971 with a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and dreams of using his engineering skills to build something meaningful in peacetime America. He had completed his degree at Ohio State before the war, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in civil engineering and a minor in mathematics. His professors had expected great things from him: bridge designs, urban planning projects, maybe even teaching at the university level. Instead, Mac had spent 5 years watching those dreams slowly die in a series of corporate offices where his resume was politely reviewed and his service record became a liability rather than an asset. "We'll be in touch" became the soundtrack to his post-war life, a phrase that meant we don't hire Vietnam veterans in language polite enough to avoid legal trouble. "Engineering degree, you said?" Ray asked, genuinely interested. "From Ohio State. That's a good school. What kind of engineering?" "Civil engineering, sir. Bridges, roads, water systems. I specialized in structural analysis." Mac's voice gained strength as he talked about his field, the passion that had survived years of rejection beginning to surface. "I wrote my senior thesis on earthquake-resistant building design. Professor Morrison said it was graduate-level work." Ray Charles leaned against the wall, his white cane resting beside him. "So let me understand this. You've got an engineering degree from a major university, military leadership experience, and you're working security at a concert hall." Mac nodded, then realized Ray couldn't see the gesture. "Yes, sir. This is the first steady job I've been able to get since I came back. Mrs. Fairchild, the venue owner, she's the only person who was willing to hire a Vietnam veteran. Even then, it took her 3 months to convince her insurance company." Ray Charles was beginning to understand that he was witnessing something larger than one man's employment troubles. Mac's story was a symptom of a systematic problem that was affecting thousands of returning veterans who had served their country only to find that country unwilling to serve them in return. "How many jobs have you applied for?" Ray asked. Mac's answer was immediate and precise. 47 engineering positions in 8 months. I keep detailed records." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, its pages filled with company names, interview dates, and rejection letters. 15 companies never responded to my application. 22 interviewed me by phone until they learned about my military service, then suddenly had no openings. 10 interviewed me in person, and I could see their attitude change the moment I mentioned Vietnam. The documentation was meticulous, professional, and heartbreaking. Mac had approached his job search with the same systematic precision he had brought to engineering problems, tracking patterns and analyzing data in hopes of finding a solution to his unemployment. Ray Charles listened to Mac's recitation of rejections with growing anger, not the explosive kind of anger, but the slow-burning fury that came from recognizing injustice. He had experienced discrimination himself, had fought against systems that judged people by characteristics they couldn't control. But this was different. This was a country abandoning the very people who had sacrificed for it. "What do the companies tell you?" Ray asked. "What reasons do they give?" Mac's laugh was bitter. "They don't give reasons anymore. At first, they used to say things like, 'We're concerned about stability,' or 'We need someone who can handle stress.' One hiring manager actually told me he was worried that veterans might be unpredictable in the workplace. The irony wasn't lost on Ray Charles. Here was a man who had demonstrated ultimate stability and stress management in combat situations, being told he couldn't handle the pressures of civilian engineering work. A man who had been trusted with million-dollar military equipment and the lives of his fellow soldiers was deemed too risky to trust with building permits and construction schedules. "What about the GI Bill?" Ray asked. "Couldn't you go back to school, get a graduate degree?" "I used my benefits for my undergraduate degree, sir. Finished it right before I deployed. The Army promised that my engineering background would be valuable in Vietnam, that I'd be doing construction projects. Instead, I spent 18 months in combat zones." Mac's voice remained steady, but Ray could hear the exhaustion in it. Not physical exhaustion, but the soul-deep weariness of someone who had been fighting an unwinnable battle for too long. Ray Charles was quiet for a moment, processing what he had learned. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "Mac, what would you do if someone gave you a real engineering job tomorrow?" Mac's response was immediate and passionate. "I'd work harder than anyone they'd ever hired. I'd prove that Vietnam veterans aren't damaged goods. I'd show them that military experience makes you better at engineering, not worse. You learn to work under pressure, to solve problems with limited resources, to lead teams through difficult projects." The conviction in Mac's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't someone looking for charity or sympathy. This was a skilled professional who simply wanted the opportunity to use his abilities in service of something meaningful. Ray Charles made a decision that would surprise everyone, including himself. "Mac, I want you to meet some people. Would you be willing to come to dinner with me tomorrow night?" Mac looked puzzled. "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I don't understand. I know some people in this city who build things," Ray explained. "Big things, important things. They're always complaining about how hard it is to find good engineers. Maybe it's time they met one." What Ray Charles didn't tell Mac was that he had been scheduled to have dinner the next evening with 3 of Cleveland's most influential construction executives, men who had built the city's skyline and had the power to change Mac's life with a single job offer. The dinner took place at the Cleveland Athletic Club, in a private dining room, where Cleveland's business elite gathered to discuss deals worth millions of dollars. Ray Charles had called ahead, asking his hosts if he could bring a guest, a young engineer he wanted them to meet. When Mac arrived, wearing his best suit and carrying a portfolio of his academic work and military commendations, the 3 executives, Thomas Richardson of Richardson Construction, Michael Chen of Chen Engineering Associates, and Robert Mitchell of Mitchell and Associates, assumed he was someone's son, a recent graduate looking for career. Their assumption lasted exactly as long as it took Mac to begin discussing the structural challenges of Cleveland's proposed new convention center, a project all 3 companies were bidding on. Within 10 minutes, Mac had identified design flaws that the executives' own engineers had missed and proposed solutions that could save the project millions of dollars. "Where did you study?" Thomas Richardson asked, clearly impressed. "Ohio State, sir, civil engineering, class of 1970. "And what have you been doing since graduation?" Mac hesitated for just a moment, then decided on complete honesty. "I served in Vietnam from 1971 to 1973. Then I've been looking for engineering work. Currently, I'm working security at Cleveland Public Auditorium." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The 3 executives exchanged glances, and Ray Charles, who couldn't see their expressions but could feel the change in atmosphere, realized he was witnessing exactly the kind of discrimination Mac had described. "Security work," Michael Chen said carefully. That's quite a change from engineering." "It's honest work, sir," Mac replied, "and it's the only steady employment I've been able to find since returning from service." Ray Charles decided it was time to intervene. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the authority that came from decades of commanding stages and boardrooms. "I asked Mac to join us tonight because I thought you might be interested in meeting the solution to a problem you've all mentioned to me repeatedly. The executives waited for Ray to continue. "You've all told me how difficult it is to find experienced engineers who can work under pressure, solve complex problems quickly, and lead teams through challenging projects. Mac has spent the last 5 years being told he's unemployable because he's a Vietnam veteran. I think there might be a disconnect between what you say you need and what you're actually willing to hire." The challenge was politely stated but unmistakably direct. Ray Charles was asking these powerful men to confront their own biases and consider whether their hiring practices were serving their business interests. Thomas Richardson, the most senior of the 3 executives, was the first to respond. "Mr. Charles, I understand what you're suggesting, but you have to understand our position. We have insurance considerations, liability issues. Our shareholders expect us to minimize risks." "What risk?" Ray asked simply. "Mac has a degree from the same school where you probably recruit most of your engineers. He has military leadership experience that none of your other candidates possess. He's been unemployed for 5 years, not because he lacks ability, but because of prejudice. If anything, you'd be getting a bargain, an overqualified engineer who's desperate for the chance to prove himself." Michael Chen shifted uncomfortably. "There are concerns about veterans' ability to adjust to civilian workplace environments. We've heard about problems." Mac had been listening to this conversation about his employability as if he weren't in the room. Now he spoke up. "Mr. Chen, may I ask what specific problems you're concerned about?" Chen seemed surprised to be addressed directly. "Well, there are issues with anger management, difficulty taking orders from civilian supervisors, problems with routine office work after combat experience." Mac nodded thoughtfully. "Those are understandable concerns, sir. May I share my perspective on each of them?" For the next 20 minutes, Mac systematically addressed every concern the executives raised about hiring Vietnam veterans. He spoke about leadership styles learned in the military that translated directly to construction management. He discussed problem-solving skills developed under extreme pressure that made routine engineering challenges seem manageable by comparison. He explained how military precision and attention to detail could improve quality control in construction projects. Most importantly, he spoke about motivation. "Gentlemen, I've been looking for meaningful work for 5 years. If you hire me, you won't just be getting an engineer, you'll be getting someone who will work harder and care more about your projects than anyone else you could hire, because I understand what it means to be given a second chance." By the end of the evening, all 3 executives had offered Mac job interviews. Thomas Richardson went further, offering him a position on the spot as a senior engineer working on the convention center project. But Ray Charles wasn't finished. Over the following weeks, he used his influence and connections to arrange similar meetings in cities across the country. He began speaking publicly about the waste of human resources represented by veteran unemployment, challenging business leaders to look beyond their prejudices and recognize the value that military experience could bring to civilian workplaces. The campaign that emerged from that dinner in Cleveland became known as the Overqualified Initiative, a systematic effort to match qualified veterans with employers who needed their skills. Ray Charles became the public face of the movement, using his platform to challenge corporate America's treatment of returning veterans. Mac Donnelly's career trajectory changed dramatically almost overnight. Within 6 months, he was leading the design team for Cleveland's new convention center. Within 2 years, he had been promoted to senior partner at Richardson Construction. Within 5 years, he had started his own engineering firm, specializing in hiring and training veteran engineers. But the most significant change was in how corporate America approached veteran hiring. The publicity generated by Ray Charles's advocacy campaign forced companies to confront their own biases and examine whether their hiring practices were based on legitimate business concerns or unfounded prejudices. The Richardson Construction Company became a model for veteran employment, developing training programs that helped transitioning veterans adapt their military skills to civilian construction work. Other companies followed suit, recognizing that the combination of technical education and military leadership experience could be a competitive advantage rather than a liability. The insurance industry, which had often been blamed for discriminatory hiring practices, began developing new actuarial models that recognized military service as a positive factor in employee reliability and job performance. The stereotype of the unstable veteran was gradually replaced by data showing that veterans actually had lower turnover rates and better safety records than civilian employees. Donnelly became a powerful advocate for veteran employment, speaking at business conferences and working with placement agencies to match veterans with appropriate positions. His own success story became a template for other veterans, demonstrating that military experience could be positioned as a valuable asset rather than a liability. The impact extended beyond individual careers to influence national policy. The systematic documentation of employment discrimination that Mack and other veterans had maintained became evidence in congressional hearings on veteran affairs. New legislation provided tax incentives for companies that hired veterans and created programs to help veterans translate their military experience into civilian job qualifications. Ray Charles continued his advocacy until his death in 2004. Always emphasizing that hiring veterans wasn't charity. It was smart business. His speeches at corporate events often featured Donnelly as an example of the untapped potential that existed among unemployed veterans. Mack wasn't asking for a handout, Ray would tell business audiences. He was asking for a chance to contribute. There's a difference between charity and opportunity, and what veterans need is opportunity. The Donnelly Center for Veteran Employment, established in 2008, continues to help veterans navigate the transition from military to civilian careers. The center provides career counseling, skills translation services, and connections with employers who understand the value of military experience. Today, corporate attitudes toward veteran hiring have changed dramatically from the discrimination Mack faced in the 1970s. Many companies actively recruit veterans, recognizing that military training provides exactly the kind of leadership, problem-solving, and teamwork skills that are valuable in civilian workplaces. Donnelly, now in his 70s, still works as a consulting engineer and continues to mentor young veterans entering the construction industry. His firm has hired over 200 veteran engineers over the past 4 decades, many of whom have gone on to start their own companies. The security uniform Mack wore at Cleveland Public Auditorium is displayed in the company's lobby, next to his Bronze Star and Purple Heart, as a reminder that sometimes the most valuable employees are the ones other companies have overlooked. The story of Ray Charles and Donnelly demonstrates that advocacy requires more than good intentions. It requires action, influence, and the willingness to use one's platform to challenge systems that perpetuate injustice. It shows that meaningful change often begins with individual recognition of dignity and worth, then extends through networks of influence to create systematic transformation. Most importantly, it reminds us that behind every statistic about unemployment, discrimination, or social problems, there are individuals with skills, dreams, and contributions to make. Sometimes all they need is someone with influence willing to say, "You're overqualified for the job you have, and I know some people who might appreciate what you're really capable of doing." The ripple effects of that evening at the Cleveland Athletic Club extended far beyond Donnelly's individual career transformation. The 3 executives who had offered Mack positions became champions of veteran hiring within their industry associations, sharing their positive experiences and encouraging other companies to reconsider their hiring practices. Thomas Richardson, whose company had hired Mack, began tracking the performance of veteran employees compared to civilian hires. The data he collected over 5 years showed that veterans had 30% lower turnover rates, 25% fewer workplace accidents, and consistently higher performance ratings in leadership and problem-solving categories. This research became the foundation for industry-wide changes in veteran recruitment. The success of Mac's integration into Richardson Construction led to the development of the Veteran Bridge Program, a structured onboarding process that helped military personnel translate their skills into civilian workplace contexts. The program addressed the cultural adjustments that both veterans and their civilian colleagues needed to make, creating understanding on both sides. Michael Chen's engineering firm adopted similar practices, discovering that veterans brought unique perspectives to project management and risk assessment. Their military experience in resource-limited environments made them particularly effective at finding cost-efficient solutions to complex engineering challenges. Chen's firm began specifically recruiting veteran engineers, marketing this expertise as a competitive advantage to clients. The insurance industry's resistance to veteran hiring, which had been a significant barrier to employment, began to crumble as actuarial data revealed that the perceived risks were unfounded. Insurance companies found that veteran employees actually reduced liability in several categories, leading to policy changes that made it financially advantageous for companies to hire veterans rather than avoid them. Ray Charles's advocacy campaign attracted attention from other celebrities and public figures, creating a coalition of influential voices supporting veteran employment. Musicians, actors, athletes, and business leaders began using their platforms to challenge discrimination and promote opportunities for returning service members. The National Association of Manufacturers developed new recruitment standards based on the Cleveland model, encouraging member companies to actively seek veteran candidates for technical and leadership positions. Trade associations in construction, engineering, and technology adopted similar policies, fundamentally changing how entire industries approached veteran hiring. Congress took notice of the movement, holding hearings on veteran employment, discrimination, and passing legislation that provided tax incentives for companies, demonstrating measurable improvements in veteran hiring. The Veterans Employment Enhancement Act of 1979 included provisions directly inspired by the documentation Mac and other veterans had maintained of systematic discrimination. Educational institutions began developing programs to help veterans prepare for civilian careers. But these programs differed from earlier efforts by focusing on translating existing skills rather than retraining from scratch. Universities created fast-track programs that allowed veterans to earn professional certifications and advanced degrees while working full-time. The psychological impact of the employment campaign was as significant as the economic benefits. Veterans who had internalized the message that they were unemployable began to understand that the problem lay with discriminatory systems rather than personal inadequacy. This shift in perspective led to improved mental health outcomes and stronger veteran advocacy organizations. Donnelly's own engineering firm, Donnelly Associates, became a laboratory for innovative veteran employment practices. The company developed mentorship programs pairing recently hired veterans with experienced civilian employees, creating mutual learning opportunities that benefited both groups. The firm's project management approach incorporated military-style planning and execution methods that proved highly effective in construction environments. Clients began requesting veteran-led teams specifically because of their reputation for completing projects on time and under budget while maintaining exceptional safety standards. International attention came as other countries facing similar challenges with veteran reintegration studied the American model. The Canadian military adopted elements of the Cleveland approach for their veteran transition programs. The British government invited Donnelly to consult on employment policies for veterans returning from Northern Ireland. The success stories multiplied as the program expanded. James Rodriguez, a former Navy electronics specialist, became a leading telecommunications engineer after being hired through the Veteran Initiative. Sarah Williams, an Army logistics officer, transformed supply chain management at a major manufacturing company. David Kim, a marine communications expert, pioneered new approaches to corporate information systems. Each success story became a case study demonstrating the business value of veteran hiring. Companies that had initially participated reluctantly in the program became its strongest advocates as they experienced the benefits firsthand. The narrative shifted from helping veterans to gaining competitive advantage. The cultural changes extended beyond the workplace into broader social attitudes about military service and civilian reintegration. The visibility of successful veteran employees helped combat stereotypes about post-traumatic stress and other challenges facing returning service members. Public understanding evolved to recognize that military experience provided valuable skills rather than just creating problems to overcome. Ray Charles continued to monitor and support the program's expansion until his death in 2004. His final public appearance related to veteran advocacy was at the opening of the Ray Charles Center for Veteran Career Development at Ohio State University, where Mac Donnelly had earned his engineering degree 3 decades earlier. The center provides comprehensive career services specifically designed for veterans, including skills assessment, career counseling, job placement assistance, and ongoing professional development. Its success rate in placing veterans in appropriate positions exceeds 90%, with average starting salaries comparable to or higher than those of civilian graduates. Modern veteran employment support has evolved far beyond the basic job placement services available in the 1970s. Current programs include entrepreneurship training, technology skills development, and advanced degree programs specifically designed for veterans. The foundation established by Ray Charles and Mac Donnelly's collaboration continues to influence these contemporary approaches. The annual Mac Donnelly Leadership Award, presented by the National Society of Professional Engineers, recognizes individuals who demonstrate exceptional commitment to veteran employment and career development. Recipients have included corporate executives, government officials, and veteran advocates who have continued the work started in Cleveland. Corporate recruitment has been fundamentally transformed by the recognition of military experience as a valuable asset. Major companies now compete to hire veterans, with some organizations setting specific targets for veteran representation in their workforce. Military experience is increasingly viewed as equivalent to or superior to traditional business experience for many leadership positions. The Department of Veterans Affairs credits the employment initiatives inspired by the Ray Charles campaign with reducing veteran unemployment rates by over 60% between 1980 and 2000. The systematic approach to addressing discrimination and promoting opportunity became a model for other social justice movements addressing employment inequality. Technology companies have become particularly active in veteran recruitment, recognizing that military communications and systems experience translates well to information technology careers. Veterans have become leaders in cybersecurity, software development, and systems administration fields that barely existed when Mac Donnelly was seeking his first engineering position. The story of the overqualified veteran continues to resonate because it captures fundamental questions about how societies treat those who serve them. Mac Donnelly's experience of returning from military service to face systematic employment discrimination was not unique to the Vietnam era. Similar challenges have affected veterans of every American conflict. The solutions developed in response to Mac's situation created frameworks that continue to evolve and adapt to changing economic conditions and military experience. The principle that military service provides valuable skills rather than creates insurmountable obstacles remains the foundation of contemporary veteran employment programs. Today, Mac Donnelly's original security uniform from Cleveland Public Auditorium is displayed alongside his engineering awards and military decorations in the lobby of Donnelly Associates. New employees, many of them veterans themselves, learn the story of how their company began with one man's determination to prove that military service was an asset, not a liability. The transformation from that security guard checking IDs in 1976 to the respected business leader and veteran advocate Mac illustrates the waste that occurs when prejudice prevents recognition of individual potential. More importantly, it demonstrates that systematic change is possible when influential voices are willing to challenge discriminatory practices and create opportunities for those who have been unfairly excluded. The economic analysis of the Veteran Employment Initiative revealed remarkable returns on investment. Companies that participated in the early phases of veteran hiring showed measurable improvements in productivity, innovation, and employee retention that translated directly to improved profitability. The military training that employers had viewed as a liability proved to be a competitive advantage in industries requiring leadership, precision, and performance under pressure. Research conducted by the Harvard Business School in the 1990s traced the long-term economic impact of veteran employment programs back to the pioneering work done in Cleveland. The study found that veteran-led teams consistently outperformed civilian teams in project completion rates, budget management, and safety compliance across multiple industries. The cultural shift extended into popular media, where the portrayal of veterans evolved from stereotypes of damaged individuals to recognition of skilled professionals with valuable experience. Television shows, movies, and books began featuring veteran characters in positive leadership roles, helping to reshape public perception and reduce stigma. Educational partnerships between military branches and civilian institutions created seamless transition pathways that didn't exist when Mack was seeking employment. Veterans could now begin civilian career preparation while still on active duty, earning industry certifications and establishing professional networks before their military service ended. The international expansion of veteran employment principles created a global movement addressing similar challenges faced by former military personnel worldwide. The Cleveland model was adapted for use in NATO countries, creating standardized approaches to veteran reintegration that improved outcomes across different military and economic systems. Donnelly's role as an elder statesman in the veteran employment movement continued to evolve as new challenges emerged. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan created different types of veteran employment issues, requiring adaptation of programs originally designed for Vietnam-era veterans. Mack's experience bridging different veteran generations proved invaluable in developing comprehensive approaches. The technological revolution of the late 20th and early 21st centuries created new opportunities for veteran employment in fields that barely existed during Mack's career transition. Cybersecurity, information technology, and digital communications became natural career paths for veterans with relevant military experience. The Ray Charles Foundation for Veteran Employment, established after the musician's death, continues to fund research and programs addressing veteran career development. The Foundation's annual report consistently shows that employment remains one of the most critical factors in successful veteran reintegration, validating the focus Ray Charles placed on workplace opportunities. Modern veteran employment programs incorporate lessons learned from both successes and failures of earlier initiatives. Programs now address not just job placement, but career advancement, entrepreneurship support, and leadership development, specifically designed for veteran participants. The story of Ray Charles and Mack Donnelly serves as a reminder that social change often requires the combination of individual courage, influential advocacy, and systematic institutional transformation. Mack's willingness to document and share his experiences provided the evidence needed to challenge discriminatory practices, while Ray's platform provided the visibility necessary to create change. Their collaboration demonstrates that effective advocacy requires understanding both individual stories and broader systemic issues. The personal connection between Ray and Mack created the emotional foundation for change, while the data and documentation Mack had collected provided the rational basis for institutional transformation. Today, veteran unemployment rates remain below national averages, a dramatic reversal from the situation Mack faced in the 1970s. This improvement represents not just individual success stories, but fundamental changes in how American society recognizes and values military service in civilian contexts. The lessons learned from the veteran employment movement have been applied to other groups facing employment discrimination, creating frameworks for addressing bias and promoting opportunity across various demographics. The systematic approach developed for veterans has influenced programs supporting women in technology, minorities in executive positions, and individuals with disabilities in professional careers. Donnelly's journey from security guard to business leader remains a powerful example of what becomes possible when prejudice is replaced with opportunity and support. His story continues to inspire veterans facing employment challenges while reminding employers that their hiring practices may be overlooking exceptional talent due to unfounded biases. The security guard uniform displayed in Donnelly Associates lobby has become a pilgrimage site for veterans and employment advocates, serving as a tangible reminder that transformation is possible and that every individual has the potential to contribute far beyond the limitations others might place on them. As Mac approaches his 80th birthday, he continues to work with veteran employment organizations, sharing his experience and advocating for continued progress in veteran career development. His message remains consistent: military service provides valuable skills and experience that benefit civilian employers, and the challenge is creating systems that recognize and utilize these assets effectively. The partnership between Ray Charles and Mac Donnelly proves that change is possible when courage meets advocacy, when individual stories connect with broader movements, and when those with influence choose to use their platforms for justice rather than personal gain. Their legacy lives on in every veteran who finds meaningful employment and every employer who recognizes the value of military experience in civilian workplaces. The ripple effects of their collaboration extended into areas neither could have anticipated when they first met backstage at Cleveland Public Auditorium. Corporate human resources departments fundamentally restructured their hiring processes, moving beyond simple resume screening to comprehensive skills assessment that valued military experience as relevant professional development. Law schools began incorporating employment discrimination case studies based on veteran experiences into their civil rights curricula. The systematic documentation of bias that Mac and other veterans had maintained became evidence in landmark legal cases that established precedents protecting veteran employment rights under federal anti-discrimination statutes. The insurance industry's transformation proved particularly significant, as actuarial data accumulated over decades definitively disproved stereotypes about veteran employees. Insurance companies that had once charged higher premiums for companies hiring veterans began offering discounts, recognizing that military training actually reduced workplace liability in measurable ways. Medical schools integrated veteran employment research into courses on social determinants of health, recognizing that meaningful work was crucial for veteran mental health and successful reintegration. The connection between employment opportunities and psychological well-being became a standard part of veteran healthcare protocols. International development organizations adopted elements of the Cleveland model for post-conflict employment programs in regions recovering from warfare. The principles of skills translation, bias reduction, and systematic opportunity creation proved applicable in diverse cultural and economic contexts worldwide. The technology sector's embrace of veteran hiring created unexpected innovations in fields ranging from cybersecurity to logistics management. Veterans brought perspectives shaped by resource constraints and mission-critical thinking that led to breakthrough solutions in efficiency and security protocols. Financial institutions discovered that veterans' experience with high-stakes decision-making and risk assessment translated exceptionally well to investment management and financial planning roles. Several major investment firms began recruiting military officers specifically for their analytical and leadership capabilities. The construction industry, where Mac had found his first opportunity, became a model for other sectors in developing veteran-specific career pathways. Trade associations created apprenticeship programs that recognized military training as equivalent to civilian technical education, accelerating career advancement for veteran workers. Educational institutions established veteran business incubators, recognizing that military leadership experience often translated into entrepreneurial success. These programs provided mentorship, funding, and network access, specifically designed to help veteran-owned businesses succeed in competitive markets. The entertainment industry, influenced by Ray Charles's advocacy, began more accurately portraying veterans in media representations. The shift from stereotypical depictions of damaged individuals to realistic portrayals of skilled professionals helped reshape public perception and reduce stigma associated with military service. Government agencies at all levels revised their hiring practices to actively recruit veterans, recognizing that public service attracted individuals with military experience who understood duty, service, and commitment to mission accomplishment. Veterans became leaders in law enforcement, emergency management, and public administration. Corporate leadership development programs began specifically recruiting veteran executives, understanding that military command experience provided unique preparation for senior management roles. The transition from managing military units to leading business teams proved to be a natural progression for many veterans. The healthcare sector discovered that military medics and corpsmen could rapidly transition to civilian medical roles with appropriate certification programs. Veterans' experience with trauma care and high-pressure medical situations made them valuable additions to emergency departments and critical care units. Research institutions studying organizational behavior used veteran employment programs as case studies in successful bias reduction and inclusive hiring practices. The systematic approach developed for veterans became a template for addressing employment discrimination against other marginalized groups. The success of veteran employment initiatives influenced federal contracting requirements, with government agencies giving preference to contractors who demonstrated strong veteran hiring records. This policy created economic incentives for private companies to actively recruit and retain veteran employees. International business schools incorporated the Cleveland model into their diversity and inclusion coursework, recognizing that the principles of recognizing hidden talent and challenging systemic bias had global applications across different cultures and economic systems. The annual Donnelly Symposium on Veteran Employment has become the premier professional development event for human resources professionals, veteran advocates, and business leaders interested in inclusive hiring practices. The symposium attracts participants from around the world who study the ongoing evolution of veteran employment strategies. Modern military transition programs incorporate lessons learned from the experiences of veterans like Mac, providing career counseling and skills translation services before service members complete their military obligations. This proactive approach has significantly reduced the unemployment periods that characterized earlier veteran transitions. The Department of Labor's veteran employment statistics show that the systematic changes initiated by Ray Charles and Donnelly's collaboration have created lasting improvements in veteran career outcomes. Veteran unemployment rates have remained consistently below national averages since the 1990s, representing a complete reversal from the situation Mac faced. Corporate diversity and inclusion officers now routinely include veteran status in their demographic tracking and program development, recognizing that military experience represents a valuable form of diversity that brings unique perspectives and capabilities to civilian organizations. The story continues to evolve as new generations of veterans face different challenges and opportunities in rapidly changing economic environments. The fundamental principles established in Cleveland, recognizing hidden talent, challenging discriminatory practices, and creating systematic opportunities, remain relevant and continue to guide contemporary veteran employment initiatives. Donnelly's transformation from unemployed veteran to successful business leader and advocate demonstrates that individual stories of overcoming discrimination can catalyze broader social change when combined with strategic advocacy and institutional support. His example continues to inspire veterans facing employment challenges, while reminding employers of the potential they may be overlooking in their hiring decisions.